Hey there, Vernacular Faithful. Redcoat here, and I've got one more instruction booklet from my collection just to catch you up on this. It's basically over the years, I've had to sell a bunch of my video games to survive, but due to the way I was selling them and who I was selling them to, they didn't care about whether or not I kept the instruction manuals. So I have a bunch of instruction manuals stuffed in a shoebox. So I figured I'd share them with you because these were things that in long trips, in long journeys, I would I'd open them up and read them and just have fun reading them. And I think there's some interesting things that you can glean from just looking at the style and everything there. So we have another Nintendo instruction booklet. Now this one is Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards from the N64 era. And immediately, if we compare this to the Soul Calibur one and the All Stars one, so first, Mario All Stars, different era, right? And what are the similarities here? So immediately we have one thing. It's like there's a wait till you see the inside feeling here with these Kirby 64. It's like this is the title, but we got more to show you, right? Um, and that's the thing. And also, there's a focus on this is an N64 game. This is an N64 thing. So there's a understanding that they need to advertise their console and say this belongs to that console. If somebody finds this randomly, they'll be like, Kirby 64. Oh, what's that? What's that on the front of this? Is that what it's played on? That sort of thing. Which is interesting when you compare that to this one, which again, they are again, it's like a very small thing, and all of the SNES games would kind of follow this idea where we have the box and then the thing here, and this is in line with how the NES games instruction booklets would work as well, where it's the box and then here's everything that's coming out. It's almost like you got your game screen, and with All Stars in particular, it's like kind of popping out a little bit. It's kind of saying how the game reaches you and installs feeling in you anyway. And of course, at the bottom here, Super Nintendo, basically saying at the end of the day, the game serves to advertise the console on which it is played. And that's an important thing about Nintendo's identity during that era, and basically their identity throughout all their eras. Every game that they make supports the console that they create, and also their brand. Right. But it's very focused. It's just here's the thing, right? Compare this to Soul Calibur, right? No mention of the console is played on. Just this is the game. Isn't it cool? And here's our main character. Here's they're not actually really central to the plot. I'm not quite sure why they decided to have those two on there. I guess it's more. I mean, Mitz is like the kind of the Ryu, although really Siegfried kind of took that, stole the main character position. I mean, Siegfried actually, in a sense, followed the same situation as Guile in the Street Fighter series, where Ryu exists and he's the middle of the road main character, but Guile's the one that's actually doing the story. It's kind of the same case here. Mitsurugi exists and he's the middle of the road main character, but Mitsurugi's the one that's actually doing the story. Um, and then, of course, we got Ivy, he was fan favorite character, and she is heavily interwoven into the plot of Soul Calibur over the years, although I still find it interesting that she's the one that's on there. Um, although, to be fair, Soul Calibur 3, uh, yeah, it's hard to pin down exactly what's the core thrust of it, other than this man here, Zasalamel, main guy, all that. Anyway, and of course, advertisement on the back as opposed to the branding. Now, oh, I should also note, and the company that made it, of course, is noted right down here. Namco, 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 also made for teens. Namco, made for teens. So this is one other thing that you notice. Look over here. There's no ESRB rating on this. That tells you about the era of when this was made. Now, anyway, when you look at this one, right? Of course, N64, very simple. This is an instruction booklet. This is going to teach you how to play Kirby 64 and tell you a little bit about it. Also, it's for the N64. And then on the back, this is a Nintendo thing. Hey, if you need help, just call us. We'll figure it out. And then right down here. Now, granted, I was never one to actually use the repair centers. Um, I guess because I mean, I never really had to fix mine, is what it came down to. I took really good care of them. And that also says something to the fact that they're all made out of Nintendium. Like you could literally drop a GameCube out the back of a truck, have it get run over, and the truck will get hurt more than the GameCube does. It's ridiculous. They're made out of Nintendium. Anyway, let's take a look at this guy. So immediately we see some similarities of style here, but there's also something I should mention. This is another thing that Nintendo did throughout its years. This official seal of quality. This is a part of how they strengthened their brand. Was basically so your brand is basically an amalgamation of all the things that you've done over the years. And that amalgamation, what that average is out to as far as quality is concerned. So the Nintendo seal of quality is basically a statement of you've seen everything that we've done in the past. We keep it to a particular level of fun factor and functionality. No one else does this like we do. And that's part of what what allowed Nintendo to survive when all of those other groups would fall off. The ones that come to mind, I mean, Activision managed to survive for different reasons. I'm thinking like Magnavox, Atari. Like Atari's still around, actually. It's just, well, not as nearly as well known. But having a visible statement of we make good games, our games will not drop below a certain level of quality, and then fulfilling that every time. That's how they strengthen their brand. And actually, I'll go ahead and read the little message they have here. This official seal is your assurance that Nintendo has reviewed this product and that it has met our standards for excellence in workmanship, reliability, and entertainment value. Always look for this seal when buying games and accessories to ensure complete compatibility with your Nintendo product. Basically, if it wasn't to snuff, you didn't get this. And they held to that. I'd say they held to that standard over the years. Anyway, to the book itself. Oh, look, E for everyone. On the inside instead of on the outside. I find that interesting. Um, but yeah, so kind of similar to the Mario one, we immediately have, hey, here's our main character, and then we have this little character who, admittedly, gameplay wise, she doesn't do much, but in the story, she's important. And then you have the first page, which is like, this is an N64 game. This is how to use your N64, and also things to be like, hey, if your controller's doing that, maybe get it fixed. And then just how to use it. And then we get to the game itself. Now, what's interesting here is this one focuses a little bit more on the story. And this was following in a trend with the Kirby games. They were, with each new installment of the Kirby series, the story would get more and more involved. And so we actually have, whereas in All Stars, the story was on one page in two paragraphs. This one is four paragraphs across three pages with imagery from in game that is talking about the story. I mean, all of that is in the opening cinematic. And then, of course, we have Kirby. This is how you use Kirby. And again, similar style. We use images and talking points, and we keep it short and snappy. It's like, hey, you can lift an inhaled enemy and throw them into other things. You can walk, you can run, you can eat, you can jump down through platforms, you can slide. and they chose the needle ability. Oh, hey, it decided to focus up. All right, but yeah, and so as an N64 game, it's a little more complicated, but I think it's also just again kind of a difference in style as far as how they were approaching it. There's a lot more verbiage in here. But I think another part of this too is this is, I feel like this is about the time where you would start getting it, where we'd start realizing, I think, in industry that while people would look at these, they wouldn't necessarily use them all the time. But again, lots of imagery, lots of pictures, um, and it's all infused with that rounded Kirby style. Very cute, very neat, very interesting. And again, it's very exciting, and you can actually see a if you look at it in a particular way, you can see how it's drawing your eyes around just with the way the shapes are, where it actually kind of draws you in a circle. And so you can just keep going around and around from action to action to action. Now it's interesting that they had the actions in here twice, but I'm guessing it's because they knew that someone would kind of turn through the pages and be like, okay, I don't care about that. Oh, that's cool story, whatever. And then they get the controls like, okay, this is what I wanted to know. And then they just be like, done. Right. But for those who wanted to, keep going through there, look for more information, that was the thing. Now, me myself, I barely ever actually open this thing up, other than to just kind of have fun with it, just kind of look at it, and all of that. But yeah, all of it, and just a bunch of little pieces. And so this is a very entertaining little book. Again, a lot of uniqueness here. Um, and this is being it from the SNES, well, not from the SNES, from the N64 era. They took a different gestalt than the Mario games where it's like, white, and then we've got the images of the characters to keep it kind of focused on. With this one, it's a lot more colorful. Like we already have that orange backdrop throughout the rest of this, which is actually an interesting choice. It's kind of warm and everything, um, and just all of this information. And again, it makes you really appreciate that even though when the game plays very simply, it's actually very complex to put together. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in there, but when you play it, it feels really natural. Also of note, because this was later on in the Kirby series, I mean, Kirby's always had other characters that he interacted with, but he had a lot more friends. And oh yeah, Adeline. There were people who were super fans of Adeline, but I think she only really appeared in a meaningful way in this game. After that, they kind of left her behind, which I think in part is because yeah, she's kind of like the only human that appears in Kirby. Like, I don't think there's another human. Well, no, that's not true. Well, I should say the only thing that actually has really close to humanoid proportions, I should say. Like there are other things that kind of you could say are human-esque, um, but they're still a basic shape with circles for feet, and nubs for hands. This is like one character who's like, I have hands and I have actual feet inside of my shoes, which is different. I think that might be why they kind of moved away from her. Anyway, that's the Kirby 64 instruction booklet, and yeah, so it's all a little piece of childhood. I played the heck out of that game. It was fun, and I really liked a lot of the things that they did with it. But yeah, so that is that booklet there. And we've talked a lot about how it compares to the others and some of the other things with it. This is one of my ones that is in better condition. I think it's just because it's a younger booklet. But yeah, so that is Kirby 64 for you. Anyway, Well, I'll choose a couple more a little bit later to go out. I'll go over. Perhaps I'll go over some of the Game Boy Advance or Game Boy booklets that I still have. Admittedly, those ones haven't survived the test of time nearly as well, just because they're smaller and harder to store. Or yeah, I think I'll grab the Rise of the Robots booklet at some point here. Um, that was a game that played terribly, but it looked cool. So there's that. Anyway, this has been Redcoat, going over booklets. Uh, thanks for tuning in, and play the games you want to play, boyos. This is Redcoat signing off.